Hey folks, welcome back. In this video, as I promised, I'm going to be creating a 2-point perspective composition with a 1-point perspective object. And for this particular demo, I'm going to be using a program that I've talked about in previous videos called Hedge Stylus. It is a really powerful tool that allows digital artists to create perspective lines, circular lines. It's a really great tool. Think of it as a digital set of French curves and rulers that you can use. This is available on the Mac. If you're looking for an equivalent tool on the PC, definitely check out Lazy Nezumi, and I'll put links to both of those in the description for this video. So I'm starting off by creating some perspective grids, and I'm recording this at twice the normal speed. So this video is sped up to 200%, just so that hopefully it stays interesting. I'm going to start off by creating a cityscape here. I'm just blocking out buildings. I hold down the Shift key to create straight lines. In some cases, when I'm working on diagonal lines, sometimes I will freehand those. Other times I will use Hedge Stylus. It just really depends upon just whether or not I can make that line work for me freehand. So starting off with the grids really helps establish proper perspective. We've got two vanishing points. The vanishing points are on off screen on either side. Hedge Stylus has a specific tool that allows you to, when you invoke it, you can create one of your vanishing points and it will just allow you to draw rays that extend in all directions from that vanishing point. And that's the tool that I'm using here. Both Hedge Stylus and Lazy Nezumi are, they charge some money, but in my professional view, I believe that the price is totally worth it if you're doing any kind of digital drawing and you want to be able to work more efficiently. I would highly recommend both tools. So you're kind of seeing me work and think through the design as I work through it. I didn't have this pre-planned. I didn't create any thumbnails. Just basically going off the cuff and seeing what I can come up with. When you're drawing in perspective, when you have those lines, those rays extending out from the vanishing point, I think it's important to consider how do you interpolate between the lines that you've already drawn, and that will help you maintain proper perspective. For example, if I'm drawing two windows on a skyscraper and if I wanted to put a third set and I didn't have a set of lines, I could either draw those extra lines to make the placement more accurate, or I can eyeball it. And sometimes I eyeball it. The objective here is to make the perspective look believable. I keep using the term believable as opposed to realistic because I'm not trying to make this realistic. I'm trying to make it convincing. I have to admit that before I started, working professionally as a student, perspective always intimidated me, and I think it's because it just seemed so darn tedious. I don't know if you feel the same way, but this was something that I just remember taking perspective books and trying to analyze and read and try to practice what was conveyed in the books. And it just seemed to not really make as much sense for me. And it was only until much later on where I really started to kind of get the idea, and it didn't become this intimidating part of the process. And I think a lot of folks do feel intimidated by perspective because it just seems like there's much more setup involved. You just can't, well, maybe you can, you just really can't just jump in there and just start drawing a set of buildings in proper perspective. without some degree of planning in my view. There are exceptions. There are people like Kim Jung-gi and folks like that that have been able to do a great job of creating believable perspective just free-handedly, and that's awesome. I am not him, and I am just a mere mortal that is just trying to draw. So for me, I have to use guides and I have to use any digital tools that can help me out. So once again, using head stylus here. And part of my workflow, I like to draw in red just because it allows me to kind of realize that the drawing is in an unfinished state. I can see through my lines a little bit better. I will eventually convert my red lines to black lines through the hue and saturation panel. But that's usually when I'm, more or less, finished with the drawing. So it does save me some time from having to go back and re-ink. But, that's just the way I work. For this particular composition, I will be using color halftones to apply color to this drawing. If you have any interest in seeing how I work with halftones, because that's not really what this video is about so much as it is combining 1 and 2 point perspective, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you'd like to see me talk about working with halftone effects. They're a lot of fun. I've learned some new things about halftones that I'm excited to share with you, but it really depends upon what you want from this particular channel. So just drop me a line in the comments. As I record this, we're about 1 week away from Christmas. So I want to wish all of you that celebrate Christmas, very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. This will be more than likely my last video for the year. If you get one more, maybe this is because I, had an extra thought or wondering that I wanted to convey, but I'm really planning on making this one the last one for the year. So it's good to power down, it's good to recharge and relax. And that's what I think I'm going to do. So here I'm adding awnings, adding some window fronts, adding some texture. Window types also vary, so looking at different reference photos for buildings I think can be very, very helpful. If you want to see an artist that does an amazing job with drawing characters in perspective in and around buildings, etc., I would definitely suggest checking out an artist by the name of Chris Samney. He's one of my favorite comic book artists. He has a really nice classic comic book style, and his use of light and shadows and just form, he's just a strong draftsman, but he does an amazing job of creating very dynamic perspective angles, and he's a traditional artist. He uses pen and ink and pencil, and you can find him on Instagram, and he's also got, I think, got a YouTube presence over here. I'll try to put a link to his YouTube channel over here, although I don't think he's as active on that, but it's definitely he's definitely an artist that I would recommend that you investigate, because I think you'll get a lot of inspiration from his work. So here I was thinking about putting some stairs, and then I just kind of vetoed that idea. It just didn't seem like it was going to be the right fit. As I work, I often try to rotate the canvas, just like I would if I were drawing traditionally. That's definitely a good habit to get into. It works really well when you're trying to draw long, straight lines. Always pull the lines towards you as opposed to drawing away from your body. You just don't get as good of a line if you're drawing away from your body, especially long lines. Here I'm putting in some sidewalks. And with anything, if you are new to drawing in perspective, just start out very simply. Try to create a 2-point perspective object. Or better yet, start off with a 1-point perspective composition. You can always look at train tracks. There's lots of great photos of train tracks or roads, and you can study the perspective in those photos and attempt to replicate that in your drawings. That's how I began. I got more confident with 1-point perspective, and then I started to want to branch out to 2-point perspective, which is what I did, and then later on 3-point perspective. You don't have to learn all the perspectives at once. You can do things, as you understand them. That's really, really important. So here I'm going to start adding some black fills, and I guess they're called technically red fills. I'm just closing in some of my gaps and filling areas with red. And the reason for that is it allows for more contrast in the composition, and kind of just gives more visual weight to the drawing. And what I mean by that is it's not just thin lines. There's some areas that are more dense that help create some separation between the objects, in this case the buildings, within this composition. If you enjoy these longer form videos, please let me know in the comments below. I'm curious to know what you think of them. I don't often make such long form videos, but I feel like it's good to show and apply what I've covered in a previous video, by making something that kind of shows me putting into practice what I've covered in my lessons. So here's a 1-point perspective ship. It has, a vanishing point on its left, and the right, you can see the back end of this ship is got parallel lines. And this 1- and 2-point perspective combination, at least the simplest case here, is where you've got some kind of a floating object, character, etc. that's in a scene that can have its own perspective. And that's what I would recommend if you're learning how to do this. If you're learning how to incorporate 1- and 2-point perspective, just start simple. I'm also thinking in 3-dimensional volumetric shapes. Adding some fills, carving out some of my shapes here, just making some kind of an interesting looking ship. Putting in a few little detailed elements. I always start with general by establishing the structure of the form, and then I move into specifics. I don't start out with detail. And I've talked about that in numerous videos in the past. If you start out with detail, then you're more married to the drawing, and you're less less willing to change it. At least that's been my experience working with students. If they start out with something that's very detailed, and you tell them that there's something wrong with their anatomy or something needs to be fixed, they've obviously put a lot of time into it, and they don't feel as motivated to fixing it. So here's my little selection trick. I'm just filling in a white background, so that way I can draw this plume of flames that are coming out of the ship without having to cut the inks that I've created. This is just a smart way to work. It preserves everything, so later on if I wanted to use that building background, I can, because it exists on its own layer and I haven't deleted anything. Here's where I'm using the True Grit textures from True Grit Texture Supply. They're a small company. I think it's owned by one person, and this gentleman has made some amazing digital tools that work across multiple platforms, whether it's Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint or Procreate. He sells brushes, he sells halftones, lots of really, really awesome things that you can experiment with. They're very reasonably priced, and I believe during the holidays he has some kind of crazy sale going on. Worth checking out. I'll put a link to True Grit Texture Supply in the description for this video. Now, I didn't take colors all the way for this particular image because it was just really showing you how I'm using 1 and 2 point perspective. So the halftone side of things is just something that I'm just kind of, I'm starting out with it, then I move on to, you know, you'll see the finished piece at the very end. So there's not much in terms of description going on there, but I do plan on making a video if there's interest. As always, I want to thank you for watching the video. You'll see the reveal here shortly. Let me know if you'd like to have me create a video showing how I use halftone textures within my own work. And I will go ahead and prepare something for you. If you found value in this video, definitely would appreciate a thumbs up on this video. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you're curious to learn. And if you find even more value and like to support the channel, please consider subscribing. That would be awesome. As always, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.